There was a time when the familiar felt like a warm hug, a cozy blanket that wrapped around Sarah, keeping the chill of uncertainty at bay. She relished in routine, where every day was a perfect reenactment of the one before. But slowly, without her noticing, comfort began to weave itself into an invisible cage. Sarah lived in a small town where the landscape of her life never changed. She owned a quaint bookstore nestled between the local bakery and the post office. It was the kind of place where the air smelled of fresh coffee and the pages of new books. Every morning, Sarah would arrive at 8 a.m. sharp, turning the sign from closed to open as if it were some sacred ritual. The townsfolk would trickle in, familiar faces seeking their next literary escape. The same people, the same stories, every single day. Initially, her bookstore was a dream, a tangible piece of her passion for literature and community. But over time, that vivid dream blurred into the monotony of everyday tasks. Arranging books on shelves, checking inventory, small talk with customers. It all began to feel like she was living on autopilot. Sarah had her rituals. She found comfort in them. A cup of tea at precisely 10 a.m., a lunch break with a sandwich from the bakery next door, a quick check of her email at 2. One evening, as she sat down with her usual book and her usual cup of chamomile tea, a thought struck her out of nowhere. A feeling, more like. The kind that nags at the heart like an itch you cannot quite scratch. Was this really all there was? Life had become a series of predictable steps. When had her beloved routine turned into shackles that bound her more tightly than she would have ever allowed? The question lingered, whispering louder with each passing day. But acknowledging it meant stepping into the unknown. And for an anxious moment, she let fear outweigh curiosity. After all, routines weren't just comfortable, they were safe. But safety had its cost. The price became evident in small, insidious ways, like the quiet exhaustion she felt creeping in at the end of a day where nothing exciting ever happened. Or the way her dreams seemed to drift further away, invisible through the bars of a cage she never realized she was building. It was during an unusually slow afternoon that she noticed a book misplaced in the travel section. "Adventures in the Unknown," read the title. Her fingers traced the cover thoughtfully, as if to wake latent dreams from their slumber. She used to tell herself stories of far-off lands and people she had yet to meet, things she was sure she'd one day have the courage to see and do. But those stories had gotten buried under layers of safe choices long made permanent. A customer's voice pulled her from her thoughts. It was Anne, a woman who wore excitement like a bright scarf, always buzzing in with stories from her weekend hiking trips or impromptu adventures. "We missed you on the fundraising meeting for the park," Anne said cheerfully. She went on about her plans to revamp the town square, an idea filled with potential and burst of color and life. Her enthusiasm was nearly palpable, filling the room with energy. Sarah nodded along, but inside, words echoed louder than before. This town was Anne's playground, a canvas for every idea she dared to dream up. And once, perhaps, Sarah might have joined in, creating something beyond words on a page. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, casting patterns on the bookstore's worn wooden floor. The light shifted as if dancing to a rhythm Sarah could not hear. At least, not yet. It flickered a fleeting glimpse of something, a reminder that there was so much more beyond her self-constructed boundaries. As darkness settled in, she found herself standing at the door long after closing time, staring at the quiet street ahead. Sarah could feel the steel glint of the lock in her palm. A decision solidified every evening as she turned the key, sealing away potential before the night could even begin. The stillness was profound, the silence begging her to ask herself questions she was not ready to answer. An unopened book lay on her counter, waiting patiently, perhaps like her own untapped story. But stepping out of the comfort zone, meant shifting the very foundation her life was built on. The slow, gathering storm of change loomed, familiar yet terrifying threads whispering freedom. Sarah stood there until the moonlight softly kissed the pavement, her heart caught in a silent tug of war. The thought of change had always seemed daunting, a tempest she was unprepared to weather. But now, it whispered promises of discovery and growth, a lullaby of what could be. She turned away from the familiar street and looked back into the cozy glow of her bookstore. The place was an extension of herself, her dreams sewn into its very structure. Yet, beneath that warmth lurked the unsettling understanding that she had let it define her limits. A sense of urgency nudged at her insides, the realization that the stories she cherished were filled with characters who faced crossroads of their own, who dared to venture into the unknown. Was she any less brave than them? Could she not, like they did, write her own narrative with fresh ink? In her mind, she revisited the stories of Anne's adventures. They were snapshots of a life rich with experiences that left vibrant imprints on her memory. What if, instead of just hearing about them, she lived them? Suddenly, she knew she had to take a step, any step, towards something different. It did not have to be grandiose or spectacular, just an act that broke the rhythm, a small fracture in the cycle that held her. The very next morning, a decision was made, and it was deceptively simple. Sarah posted a small notice in her shop window. Closed for renovation, opening soon. The words were less about changes to bookshelves or decor, and more a declaration of her intent to remodel her life. She did something she had not done in years. She booked a train ticket. The destination was not far, just a few towns away, but it was the journey that mattered. A different view from the window, the sound of rumbling steel tracks marking the passage of time. A sign that the world was broader than the routines she had confined herself to. On the train, she watched landscapes change, feeling the thrill of stepping towards the unfamiliar. It was as if the very motion of travel began to unfurl something tight within her. The uneasiness morphed into anticipation, every mile a note in a new melody that sang of openness and possibility. Upon returning, Sarah felt a shift. Her bookstore remained her sanctuary, but she no longer saw it through the lens of confinement. She began to rearrange the books, mixing genres, creating spaces that invited curiosity and conversation. She organized a book club, an open invitation for others to share an exploration, whether through pages or personal stories. Anne joined her one afternoon, bringing warmth and laughter, and unexpectedly, a gift. A map of trails leading to hidden gems surrounding their little town. It was an unspoken challenge, a gentle nudge towards embracing the outdoors and the unfamiliar landscapes they offered. Sarah took up the challenge, spending weekends discovering paths she had only imagined. Each hike, each trailhead, was a reminder that comfort zones, though reassuring, were not the places where growth thrived. The bookstore became a hub of enthusiasm, as Sarah infused it with the vibrancy she found outside its doors. She curated events with local adventurers and authors, fostering an environment where stepping outside one's boundaries was encouraged and celebrated. Sarah's life gradually filled with stories she lived rather than just read. Small adventures seasoned her days, and she found herself more whole, a reflection of the unexpected roads she dared to walk. On a quiet night, as she sat with her usual cup of chamomile tea, the question that once haunted her faded, leaving behind an echo of assurance. The path she chose was not about abandoning what she loved, but about broadening it, letting it breathe and evolve. The cage that once held her had dissolved, replaced by windows and doorways opening onto infinite possibilities. And if ever the bars threatened to close again, she knew she had the key, the courage to unlock the unknown. In the end, Sarah understood a truth woven through all great stories. Life's richest chapters begin when you choose to write beyond the margins,